I know most of you probably have a person that's hard to shop for, even with the glut of quality and less quality, but still admittedly enjoyable, games on the market today. Even when you're buying presents for another gamer, separating the wheat from the chaff can be difficult and dangerous. No one wants to be greeted with that awkward stare at a less than stellar gift, and I was determined to find something that really made my friend smile. She'd recently had a pretty successful exhibit, so I figured I could afford to splurge a little, despite not knowing what, if any, games she'd enjoy. See, the two of us went our different ways going up. I ended up continuing to enjoy video games for gameplay, the art, the story, everything. She enjoyed adventure games, and pretty much only those. When the death of adventure games hit, so too did her interest in gaming. Our circle of friends, largely gamers themselves, kept on trying to get her back into the hobby, and she'd occasionally play one from time to time, but none of them held her interest, and we eventually just decided she wasn't interested in gaming, modern or otherwise. Which was fine, of course, but I'd begun to think that it was less that, and more that she was looking for the sort of game that wasn't made very often anymore. And with the glut of early access games on a certain digital distribution service, I figured, let me see what I can find. I know, your chances of buying something horrible, incomplete, or horribly incomplete are pretty high. But I'd also seen a lot of amateur-developed games that were fun, charming, creative, maybe a bit simple in terms of gameplay or context, but possessing the kind of heart that I think my friend had missed. Truth be told, I was getting kind of excited myself, and I guess looking back on it, it was as much a hope that I'd find something as it was a desire to show support. Tunnels didn't look like much at first. The graphics were definitely of the 1990X Myst rip-off variety, with loads of admittedly pretty, pre-rendered backgrounds and overlaid interactive objects. What caught my eye was that it was made by a brother-sister team. I thought that was pretty cool, and interesting enough to be worthy of a glance. The asking price was $350 American, and thus well within my price range. No reviews have been left yet, no hyperbolic glee or trolling, no rage that the game didn't have the most responsive combat or the most beautiful graphics, nothing. It was that complete lack of publicity that sealed the deal for me. Why not try it? And if I like it, gift a copy and write a nice review. So I started the game. It throws you right into the thick of things. No menu, no options, no ability to save, to load, nothing. Tunnels just has you awaken in a tunnel. Some sort of archaeological dig by the look of it. You can look in all directions in real time, similar to what games like Real Myst let you do. This was a step up from having to pixel hunt for directions to find items or clues, but also sent my head spinning, especially because the map itself was beautiful. You're probably wondering how a dust-ridden tunnel can be beautiful, but I just don't know. Despite the cheesiness of the graphics, the soft ambient music, calm, slightly somber, created this fantastical feeling of being on an adventure that I hadn't felt in years. I could smell the stale dirt, see the phosphorescence of the waning electric light above, feel the crunch of my boots against the carefully set path. You had to click the pathway to move forward, of course, and as you did so, the menu would pop up. Better late than never, I suppose. You were greeted immediately with a questionnaire of all things. Which of the following appeals to you the most, with a list of desserts? I chose cake. Would you rather stay at home or leave your home? I chose leave. Where would you like to go, with a list of places? Park, bay, mountain, forest, and research hospital. I really wanted to choose that last option, but I chose forest. Of note, I'm capitalizing the choices here, because they were capitalized in the text present. The penultimate question was, do you like archaeology? With a yes or no answer. I chose sure, and the last question was, are you having fun? I had to think for a bit there. The questions had kind of ruined the mood, but I still felt pretty pumped, so I chose yes. The questionnaire then folded itself up like paper and disappeared into the distance. I was kind of expecting it to go into the brown backpack icon that had appeared in the right corner of the screen, but no such luck. Along the causeway of the dig, several items had been placed. Shards of pottery, burnt books, fragments of tools. You could investigate them, but not do much with them, and I began to get frustrated. The causeway went on for about 20 minutes, and I spent a lot of time trying to get any object to do anything. But again, nothing. Then I came to the end, however, and everything changed. There was a mask, one of those funerary masks they sometimes pressed for famous people who've since passed on. It was highly stylized, of white and blue ceramic, of a fairly old woman with a wrinkled face. But the plaque nearby read that this was the Grey Lady. Despite my initial shock at a new and non-generic object, I couldn't find anything to do with the mask at first, and soon began to feel I'd experienced everything there was to see in tunnels. Turning away, I attempted to move back towards the entranceway to see if there was at least a credits section, but a strange thwick-thwick-thwick reel of mechanisms caught my attention. I had my character look back. Nothing had apparently changed with the mask of the Grey Lady, but I knew that something had made that noise, and I carefully spent time looking around the mask when I noticed my cursor turn from a pinprick of light into a barely visible crosshair. I clicked, and the underside of the mask slid open, revealing a hidden compartment filled with cake and candy and chocolate. Curiously weirded out, I moved the items aside. Yes, even the cake. And it moved about as naturally as you'd expect any 1990s game to move an object, completely undamaged by whatever limbs my character had. And underneath were several documents, talking about the Grey Lady in some detail. Her life, her death, how she was perceived as a protector of children and a regional spirit, and the end of her life in forest. Now we were getting somewhere. I noticed that the secret compartment itself had a hidden back, and tried moving that away. Doing so caused the pedestal and the mask to slowly rotate at about 15 frames per second, and reveal a passageway up to a forest by the road. My character looked up at the sun for a bit. Then the game faded to a little screen that hadn't been there the first time I played. Only two options were visible. One with the crumpled paper of the first questionnaire, and a small brown mask icon. I was curious why they hadn't chosen the mask of the Grey Lady, but the time it had taken to play the game is maybe an hour tops. Excited, I tried the mask icon. Back in the tunnels, the pedestals had been removed, and the various artifacts scattered and broken, seemingly on purpose. Taking a step forward caused another different questionnaire. This was apparently the big thing that tunnels had going, with your answers creating different stories or perhaps results. I didn't go back and try every option with previous questionnaires, which is probably what I regret most. This time, the questions were about physical activities, sports, recreational hobbies, the longest distance ever walked, with a draggable mile line that went all the way to 1010 to the 8th. I filled in these pretty randomly and got the same experience as before. The Grey Lady's mask, but the hidden compartment had been ransacked, and there were used pill jars and a knife in its place. I could take the jars, empty as they were, but not the knife, which just made a strange metallic mewling noise when I clicked on it. Definitely sounded nothing like a knife, that's for certain. Using the pill jars caused the tunnels to disappear, and I reappeared in a maze of new tunnels, all alike. You'd walk in any direction, but it didn't seem to matter, and eventually the terrain disappeared and I heard my character breathing. And then I was back at the title screen once again. A third round, with a new icon, that of a fire, saw a tunnel complex without pedestals or light. The ambience from the prior two trips was gone, replaced with a strange whirring sound, like a ceiling fan that had gotten snagged on something large, perhaps something wet. And the stand of the Grey Lady was completely blasted. Char remained where it had once been. Hesitantly, I tried interacting with the stand and then the char, but nothing happened. I even tried turning around to see if I'd trigger some providential hint again, but nothing happened. I knew there must be something more, however, so I turned back around once again and started interacting with the wall desperately. To my surprise, it used the same sound as the knife, and then began to rotate at the same speed as the pedestal had earlier. Behind the wall was an entire shrine. Gigantic stone calendars lined the ceiling, At least, I think they were calendars. In the center of the room was a huge statuary that I didn't recognize. It wasn't the Grey Lady, and I wasn't sure if there was a concrete mythology to the game. Perhaps I'd missed something. There were multiple areas on the statue I could interact with. The woman's hands, her eyes, and her horns. Did I mention the horns? They were perhaps as tall as my character seemed to be. There must have been a time limit, because my character slipped out of control, and the third questionnaire came up, asking if I preferred to be happy or sad, warmth or cold, groups or loneliness. I couldn't even fill out the damn thing before getting thrown back to the title screen again. And icon 4, a painting of some kind, didn't start. Instead, it simply opened up the last icon I could find, one of the very stylized human faces, kind of like one of those old dramaturgy masks, half smiling, half crying. I was back in the tunnel's maze, but I had the knife from before, and a very rudimentary health bar that looked like it'd been ripped from another game. The same 10-second loop of something breathing was playing, again and again. I couldn't find it, but it couldn't find me. Eventually, I heard something that sounded like it was deflating and received a prompt to use the knife. I don't know why, but I just waited, and the breathing sound queued up again. The camera shook wildly, and I received all sorts of questions, rapid fire. Most were personal. My weight, for example, whether I was male or female, which of the following names I loved most and hated most, if I had ever worked for a branch of a certain military force, which age group I fell into. Sometimes they were more than that, embarrassingly personal. Answering them, all of them, even the ones that began asking very specific things, yielded nothing at first. Then the title screen came up, and one by one, the icons erased themselves, and the game closed. The experience was very brief, but I was perplexed, so I decided to try contacting the authors. I'm not sure which, or maybe both, sibling I was talking to, but I actually got through. I know, I should have capped it, but it was a weird conversation. Aqua Ultra. Hey. Binifrons. Hello, thank you for playing Tunnels. What did you think? Aqua Ultra. Hello, sorry, I'm not a very fast typist. Aqua Ultra. I enjoyed it, but it was short, and I wasn't sure what the point of all the questions was. I was wondering if you could explain. Binifrons. The questions added replay value and a sense of thrill to the experience. There were a lot of interesting hidden things in the game proper. Did you find all of them? Binifrons. Could you tell me what affected you most? I want to add that Binifrons typed at ludicrously fast speed. I mean, there was no delay between my answer and the response. Aqua Ultra. No, I don't think so. Sorry. Probably a sense of claustrophobia, I guess. Of being in a place I shouldn't be. Binifrons. What sort of place, of the following, would you say it reminded you of? A cavern, an attic, a war zone, a mental asylum? Aqua Ultra. Who am I talking to? At this point, Binifrons didn't type anything for maybe 20 minutes. At first I thought they'd just gotten angry or left, or had an internet issue or something. I'd started watching something when I finally got a response. Binifrons. Sorry, that wasn't the question I asked. Could you try telling me which of the above the following reminded you of? Aqua Ultra. A war zone. Binifrons. Thank you. We're trying to make the experience feel authentic. It's hard, since it's just the two of us. Binifrons. Would you be willing to take part in a clinical study to improve the quality of the game? Aqua Ultra. No, thank you. Binifrons. No, thank you. I'm really glad you enjoyed our game. Thank you for playing. I thought that was it, but then something, and I'm not sure what exactly happened. Binifrons. Have you ever been court-martialed? Did you ever receive a dishonorable discharge or honorable discharge? Would you ever be willing to testify in a jury of your peers? Have you ever held beliefs that could be considered harmful to you, your peers, or your country? And then Binifrons logged off. I sent a copy of Tunnels to my friend. She couldn't access it, and the next day the game was off early access. The mystery itself became more interesting than the game. But eventually I started to forget about it, until recently, when I found several of the questions, word for word, in the test questions page of a book I used as a part-time TA. Further investigation revealed that many of the questions in the game, spelling and grammar mistakes included, were lifted entirely from other material, leaving the question of how much else was lifted from other material, and what the purpose of the questions was.
What's that I think?